Welcome to the video. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite albums. I posted a video just the other day describing what I was going to do, and the idea is that as well as doing a rundown of my favorite artists from maybe the top 10 albums or the worst or the best albums, I thought what I'd do is I'd try and select a number of albums that over my almost 50 years of collecting, albums that have kind of stood the test of time, that I still keep going back to, and I know that people love them as well as I do. And so I thought what I would do is maybe name the series, my record of the week or whatever. I'm open to suggestions, but I'll probably be posting this one as record of my week. So today's album, my first in this series, one of my favorites is this one. It is the Blue Nile and A Walk Across the Rooftops. Now, I've got a friend of mine who lives in the northwest of England called Andy, and way back in the 80s, we're all buying records, some of us more than others, and I was hoovering up albums by Echo and the Bunnymen, by Elvis Costello, The Cure, the Eurythmics, Culture Club in there as well. It was a boom time for record collecting because you started to see highly discounted 12-inch singles being released, which most often included extra tracks. So it was a great time to buy records and start building the collection. But Andy wasn't really doing that as much as I was. But one thing that Andy had is I had impeccable taste. And one time we were having this conversation. I went around to his place, and he said, "You should listen to this album." And I'd heard I had heard the single from this album, Tinseltown in the Rain, on the radio, and it was kind of a bit of a minor hit, but I didn't know anything about the Blue Nile. So anyway, I borrows the album, and one of the things that I begin to notice very, very quickly is that it had a very different sound than a lot of the bands that I was actually listening to at the time. They had this single, Tinseltown in the Rain, which has just got this chugging beat. It's really quite up-tempo, but it goes on, I think, about 6 minutes. It's really a great single, and I thought, well, any band would have that single as the first track on their album. And yet the Blue Nile didn't do that. The Blue Nile started with the title track, A Walk Across the Rooftops, which really, not one to grab your attention initially. It's very slow, it's very atmospheric. There's these kind of strange percussion noises coming from left and right, a little bit industrial sounds here and there, and it's full of atmosphere. And the thing that you notice very quickly is Paul Buchanan's voice. Now, the Blue Nile were Paul Buchanan, which was the vocalist and the pianist. Then you had Paul Moore and Robert Bell. Paul Moore did a lot of the keyboards, and Robert Bell played the bass. But Buchanan is the main guy. He's the guy who does most of the songwriting too. And his voice is really quite unique for a quasi-pop band of the early 1980s. And his voice is full of melancholy, full of yearning, and his lyrical style is really, again, quite different to many others. He has this economy in his writing. He writes about really... his lyrics are quite sparse. He doesn't sing very fast. He sings usually quite slow. He writes, the subject matter is usually about love, kind of kitchen sink drama type thing. So very much about the domestic scene, about how the minutiae of life can become so important. They're important ingredients, and he's not getting carried away by these great big themes. He grounds his lyrics in something that is very recognizable by people living ordinary lives, and not some idealized view of what love is all about. So he has this great quality of being seemingly very authentic and very vulnerable. And and it kind of characterizes one of the brave things about the Blue Nile, and that they're not afraid of using silence in the creation of their music. So a lot of their music is very sparse, and when you think about the modern composer like Max Richter, who does very slow pieces, mostly piano based, full of air and space. He must have been influenced by the Blue Nile when he was younger. He must have been. But anyway, this particular album is an absolute stunner. It's not without its problems though. It's not completely brilliant. Even though I said it was a stunner, it has some tracks which are better than others. So you've got the Walk Across the Rooftops that I've described. Then it really sets up this mood when Tinseltown in the Rain comes thundering in. It really is quite an impact. And I tend to listen to my music loud, often in the evening, maybe when the lights are low. You turn this album up loud and it just fills the room with great, mysterious atmosphere. Then the side closes with From Rags to Riches, which is kind of a little bit like the title track, but it's, for once, I think Paul Buchanan's vocals are a little bit overdone, a little bit, he's trying just a little bit too hard, but it's another slow, atmospheric piece. Then you move on to side 2, and you've got the other single from the album, Stay, which is it's trying too hard to be a Tinseltown in the Rain, by my reckoning. It's a bit too repetitive. It's a bit too predictable. It simply isn't in the same league as Tinseltown. Then you have Easter Parade, which is a thing of great beauty. Again, incredibly slow. Gorgeous track. And then Heatwave, most definitely B-side material. Again, another up-tempo number. You know, apart from Tinseltown, most of my things I dislike about the Blue Nile is when they try to do up-tempo stuff, which is not really, I don't think they do it as well and not as distinctively as the others. And then Automobile Noise closes the album. Again, a fairly quiet, atmospheric piece. So this album gets pulled out often. It's great if you're into hi-fi. That first 2 tracks really displays the qualities of whatever hi-fi setup you've got. They are not a prolific band, and in fact they don't exist anymore. Paul Buchanan also released a solo album around about 10 years ago, and I was lucky enough to see him at the Birmingham Symphony Hall, and I had this fantastic seat, first or second row. I think it was second row. And one of the things you notice is that he has this vulnerable persona, as I mentioned earlier, and the amount of affection and love coming from the audience for him was just incredible. Now, you know, most quality bands get a standing ovation, but he got a standing ovation like one that I've not really experienced at any other concert. It was for him. It wasn't for the band. It wasn't for his music. It was kind of for him, and he stood there with his hand in his heart, and it just went on for absolutely ages. And he did a set which was mostly Blue Nile material, and he closed the concert in the encore with his version of Frank Sinatra's "Strangers in the Night." I'm pretty certain that was the one. All I can remember how gorgeous it was and how vulnerable his voice was sounding. It was really special. They did it. They're not prolific, as I mentioned. So they did a few other albums. They're all good. This one was the second album, called Hats. Downtown Lights, Saturday Night, outstanding tracks. Not as atmospheric, well, different, a little bit more predictable, but still an absolutely outstanding album. Then they did Peace at Last. Many years later. Let's see what year was this one. 89 was Hats, by the way. 83 was Walk Across the Rooftops. 89 was Hats. This one here doesn't tell me on the cover. But anyway, years later, probably about another 7 or 8 years later, Blue Nile on Peace at Last. So this one, fantastic opening track, and Happiness, the beautiful family life as well. It's gorgeous. And then their last album was High. These last couple of vinyls here are the reissues that came out in 2020. This is lovely as well. Days of Our Lives, I Would Never, and High. But anyway, we're here to talk about A Walk Across the Rooftops. This is the album you should get if you haven't already heard it and you've got this interest in kind of ambient style, atmospheric music that is a varying pace, including the very slow. You cannot go wrong with this band and this album. It's fantastic. So that's all I want to say on A Walk Across the Rooftops. Hope you enjoyed the video. By all means, pass your own comments. It'd be great to hear other people's opinions as well. That album has stuck with me for many years, and I know it's stuck with many other people as well. So that's the first in this series. I'm going to do another one in due course. So maybe next week, my record of the week will be something else. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.